Hi, I'm Stephen Aryan, and I'm here posting my first video on YouTube on Authortube because in the future I'm going to be hosting more of these on my channel. So I thought I should do the newbie questions first and just get some of the basic information out of the way. So let's go through the questions. Number one, how did you find out about Authortube? I think I was watching a lot of the booktubers. I watch a lot of people talking about books. I like watching them review books, a lot of fantasy and science fiction. And someone mentioned Authortube, so I looked into it a little bit more. And because we haven't been able to do a lot of conventions in person, I thought I'd do something online, talk to authors, and then that started my journey into Authortube. Number two, what genres do you write in? So I write in science fiction and fantasy. I'll come on to a bit more about the novels in some of the other questions that answer some of that. So what is your, number three, what is your preferred writing tense, point of view, and category? So I only write fiction for adults, and I prefer third person usually. I've done a couple of novels in first person, and they're okay, but they're not as comfortable, and also they're a lot more restrictive in that if you have third person, you can have several characters exploring different parts of the world. But if you're only doing it first person, everything is through that person's lens and you have to trust them. And if they're an unreliable narrator, then it can cause problems. Unlike being able to jump to another part of the world or another part of the city or wherever the story might be and explore a different aspect. So it's not always through one filter. Question four, are you a plotter, pantser, or a plantser? Which I'm guessing is a combination of the two. I'm definitely a plotter. I tend to know where the story starts, finishes, and the middle. I also have what I call milestones along the way. So how I get from A to B and B to C, the different milestones, I don't know. That's the kind of creative part. So there's always a little bit of a surprise for me, because if it's boring for me to write it, then it's probably going to be boring for the readers, and I don't really want that. So there's a creative element in anything that I do. So I guess it's a little bit of a combination. I don't think they're extremes. I don't think any writers work completely to an extreme, even if they say they're a pantser. I think somewhere in the back of their mind, they're working stuff out. So when they say they just make it up as they go along, I don't think I believe that really. Number five, are you self-published, published, or yet to be published? I am published. I currently have 6 novels published by Orbit Books, the traditional publishing way, and one ebook and audiobook novella. And I've got a couple more books coming out next year in 2021, and then the following year in 2022. What publishing company, literary agents, or printing company are you represented by? So, as I said, 6 books with Orbit Books in the UK, USA, and everywhere around the world. I've got 2 books coming with Angry Robot. I do have a literary agent. She's called Juliet Mushens, and she works for the Mushens Entertainment Agency, which is relatively new, but she's been in the business as an agent as part of other agencies for a number of years now, and she has some very big clients. So I'm very lucky that she is my agent. Number 7, what Authortube related videos can we expect to find on your channel? As I mentioned, I miss going to conventions. I miss talking to authors. We spend a lot of time talking in bars, having drinks, bitching about the world, writing, process, world building, whatever it might be. And I miss doing that in person. And given that the current situation is going to continue for the foreseeable, I thought I would do some head-to-head discussions, talking with authors. We're going to have late night chats, so it's going to be frank, it's going to be interesting, and we're going to delve into whatever areas take our fancy, talking about writing, process, and all of that kind of stuff. Okay, question 8, when did you start writing? I think I've always been writing. I've been one of these kids that was always writing stories, even from a young age. I remember when I was about 10, we had one of these writing assignments from a school teacher, and you were given a line, and then you were supposed to make up a whole story based around that. And I basically had a story in my head that I then worked into it. And I got points from the teacher saying, yes, it's an interesting story, but it isn't what we really asked you to do. However, I did quite enjoy the story. So I obviously had it in my mind already, and I was just fitting it in with what I had planned. So I've always been writing stories as long as I can remember, really. Question 9, what was the first story you ever wrote? I don't know. It must have been something in primary school, I think. We're always doing something like that. And I've always been interested in fiction, and even from a young age, reading a lot of fantasy stories, myths and legends, all of that kind of thing. And I probably made my own version of one of those stories, but I can't remember what it would have been. Question 10, what authors have inspired your writing the most? This answer changes, I think, as I get older, but there are some authors that if I look back now and try to read their books, I'd probably find them a bit of a struggle, but at the time, they were instrumental in creating the foundation upon which others have then been built that influenced my work. So growing up, yes, I did read Tolkien, but I also read C.S. Lewis and Ursula Le Guin, Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman with the Dragonlance books. Terry Brooks was very good with all his Shannara stuff, and later then I had problems with some of the later books and I didn't get to read all of them, but at the time they were very, very important and very interesting and very exciting because there wasn't nearly as much fantasy as there is today. Another big influence for certain is David Gemmell, and a lot of people don't know who he is these days because he passed away a number of years ago, but he was very popular during the late 80s and 90s and very early 2000s. And he wrote over 20 fantasy novels. And in many ways, I think he's the precursor of what some people call grimdark, because he wrote complicated characters that are very grey morally in difficult situations, trying to do the best. It's not nearly as brutal, perhaps, as what some people call grimdark today, but he was an enormous influence on my work, and I was very lucky to have met him before he passed away. More recently, there are lots of other authors that I read and think, oh, that's really interesting. I don't borrow something from them, but I like their style and I think about it, and that helps me with my own writing. Like Robin Hobb, she has amazing, wonderful characters, and it helps me then with my own characters, thinking, oh, I should do more of this or that. So it really depends, but I'm constantly learning from people. Question 11, do you schedule your writing sessions or simply get to writing whenever you can find the time? I schedule my writing sessions. I have a daily word count and I have a monthly word count, only because I have deadlines and I know I need to hit them. And one or two very famous fantasy authors have not hit their deadlines, and it has colored many others. A lot of people will say they won't read a series until it's complete because they're afraid that it never comes out, which is actually quite damaging for us middle list authors like myself. So I do schedule all of my writing. I've hit every single one of my deadlines either early or on time. Question 12, do you type in a computer typewriter, write everything by hand, or a blend of those? And where do you write in general? I always write in the same place. I'm not someone who can write on a train or in a busy cafe or something like that. That works for some people. It doesn't work for me. I write the same place, the same time, the same chair, so everything's familiar. I work on a simple word processor, no fancy software of any kind. I'm sometimes scribbling down ideas on bits of paper that I then type up later and add to the book or something, a work in progress. Question 13, what are you most looking forward to now that you're part of Authortube? Doing more of these videos, really, talking to other authors, finding out about how they think, how they look at characters, world building, how they put stories together. So that's it. I'll be back with more videos very soon.